I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today. I don't have it written down in front of me, so I'm just going to say Rick Yamert is a highly educated and it's a never-ending quest, I find. When your mind is active, education is your entire life. So since his retirement, I think he's become even more of an educated person because the inquisitive mind never stops. Rick Yamert was the arts and entertainment editor and writer for the News Journal newspaper for many, many years. And I vividly recall reading articles that he wrote decades and decades ago when I was a teenager. So he's that good.
Back in the 1900s.
Yes, in the 1900s. Wrote a wonderful review of a concert that I missed where Stevie Nicks came to our own Ocean Center, and he said she was a consummate professional because some fool in the audience flung a beer bottle and it sailed past her head and she never missed a note. God bless you, Stevie Nicks. So that's me adding. One of my heroes.
The Church of Stevie Nicks.
The Church of Stevie Nicks, yeah. Rick has written books about ravens and crows and their spiritual essence and the bounty they share with us. Last Sunday, he was here with us and we drummed outside, and there was, as they say, a murder of crows in one of the trees across the way, and they decided they would add their energy and their essence to our drum circle, which I knew was their way of paying tribute to Rick Yamert. And they wanted to join in. When the big red-headed woodpecker appeared in the tree over where Rick was standing, and my friend Shirley was sitting beside me and said, ugh. And I felt like my mother's spirit. I love red-headed woodpeckers, and she would always say, look, red-headed woodpecker. That's the way my mom talked, like Carol Channing. So thank you, Rick, for opening our minds and coming to us multiple times here at CUC and sharing of your knowledge and wisdom and your beautiful, gifted flute and sitar playing. So please help me welcome Rick Yamert.
Let's see. Okay, we're going to go back here. There's no right or wrong answer to this. But how many of you have heard of the term the sacred masculine or sacred masculinity before? Okay, about half of you have, and that's perfectly fine. When I was developing this talk, I put out on Facebook asking friends, what does this term mean to you? How would you define the sacred masculine? I'm going to share some of those responses a little later, but there were some friends say, Rick, what the hell are you talking about? Which is perfectly fine. My natural impulse is to begin by defining the sacred masculine, which is kind of the subject of the talk, is that it's very difficult to define. It's a very amorphous concept. It probably arose, for as near as I can tell, back in the late 80s, early 90s. The poet Robert Bly wrote his book, Iron John, and that was addressing not so much sacred masculinity, but a masculinity from a number of perspectives. So that's kind of the roots of it. As I was putting this together, I began to wonder, the sacred masculine, is this a cultural thing? Or is it a spiritual thing? And then it dawned on me, what is our spirituality if we cannot and do not incorporate it, integrate it into our daily lives? So, of course, it's both. It's cultural, it is spiritual. This is an AI image, and that's a whole nother talk sometime about AI, and there's some very interesting discussion online about whether energy, entity, spirit is manifesting in AI, that'll have to be a talk for another time. But I did this as an experiment. So I just typed in an image generator, I just typed in sacred masculine, and that's what it came up with. Now, we may know that with AI scrapes, that's the term they use, the internet. So AI is able to draw information from literally millions of sources. So I was intrigued how an AI image would come up for sacred masculine. And that was the first one it came up with. But rather than give a definition right away, I'm going to set the scene with some seemingly random thoughts. When I mentioned this concept to somebody that I live with and hold very dear in my heart and consider my soulmate, she kind of got, and I'm talking about Michelle, she got a kind of a pained look on her face. And she said, Rick, I don't know if I should say this, but I almost think that the words sacred and masculine don't go together. And I'm like, whoa. And, I said, that's fine. That's kind of the subject of the talk. And of course, we talked and more and went on from there. And interestingly, Michelle is a psychic intuitive, and she does readings at Hotel Casadega and in private. And she's been doing that for about 6 months or more. And in this discussion, she told me in all that time, in her own private practice, she's had one male client. The rest have been women. So that kind of, Men are really fabulous and incredible. Whoa, that's cool. This is another AI image, but when I typed in sacred masculine, I came across a woman named Deidre Hade, H-A-D-E, and she describes herself as a modern day mystic, poet, and visionary leader in the ancient arts of the wisdom traditions. And she had written an essay on the sacred masculine. And that was in her opening statement. She said, first, let me state that I think men are really fabulous and incredible. And again, this is my AI image. But I thought, that's such a ridiculous disclaimer. Men are really fabulous and incredible. But that kind of talks to the state of things that we're talking about. The fact, and I know she was concerned, she didn't want to come across as man bashing. And I get that, but sheesh, that's your opening salvo. That's the state where we're in. And how many of you are familiar with man versus bear? And there's no reason you should be. But in the spring, it became a viral scandal topic on TikTok and other social media because somebody had posted, if you are a woman walking in the woods, would you rather encounter a strange man or a bear? Guess who won?
Bear.
The bear. The bear won. There's and again, this drew literally millions of hits and feedback. And women would say they chose the bear because they don't know the man. The bear they can predict, the man they couldn't predict. But again, it gets to that topic of masculinity, mankind. We can be we're perceived as very threatening in a lot of situations. And also part of that discussion was some flipped it and they asked men, would you rather your wife or daughter, if she's walking in the woods, would you rather that she encounter a man, strange man, or a bear? And the men would say the bear. And and I got to thinking, if I'm walking in woods, who would I want to encounter? And I had been in the woods before and up in Tomoka State Park walking by myself. And I remember one time specifically and the poor guy, he looked like a transient, and he was not threatening, but my impulse was My spidey sense went up. I was on alert. And if that had been a woman, if it had been a woman, I would have probably gone overboard to appear non-threatening, and I probably would have come across as weird. So, but anyway, so man versus bear. All right, one more. Jean Shinoda Boland she's written a lot of books. She's a clinical psychologist. And in this book, Gods in Every Man, a new psychology of men's lives and lovers, she writes about different male archetypes. And in her section on the Dionysus, I'm going to quote here, whether or not the Dionysian tendency for extreme and intense feelings repeatedly disrupts his life, a man's life, and is inflicted on others, depends on how strange the archetype, how strong the archetype is, and how stable and strong the ego is. A person with a healthy ego can say and mean, for example, still quoting her, just because I want to murder you or cut my wrist doesn't mean I'll do it. But she goes on to write, if the ego is unstable and has experienced severe emotional trauma, a mass murderer can result, such as Charles Manson, who was a mystic, a lover, and a killer. And I'm thinking, my goddess, here's a book on God archetypes in mankind, in men, and Charles Manson is name checked. I'm like, I really want to say some strong cuss words just out of astonishment. I'm not condemning her, but again, that goes to speak to the nature, pardon the phrase, the nature of the beast. And I guess pun intended. All right, another AI, and again, this was an experiment. I wasn't really looking for an image, but I thought, what if I type in toxic masculinity into AI? And this is one of the 4 images that came up. I wanted to see what AI, how it would portray. Now, toxic, how many have heard that term, toxic masculinity? More of us. And we all know what that is. It's masculinity that exhibits to excessive degrees, dominance, hierarchy, consciously or unconsciously seeing women and LGBTQ people as weak or lesser. It's a masculinity that shuns being vulnerable, because if you're vulnerable, that opens you up to being exploited or dominated yourself. So that's, and in toxic masculinity, there's no room for a win-win. It's for me to win in whatever arena, you in the somebody has to lose. So there's no room for a win-win in toxic masculinity. So that's, and again, when I was researching, doing deep dives, so much of the definitions was, and the talk and the writings on this was defining what sacred masculinity is not. And that's how toxic masculinity kept coming up. Matthew Fox, how many of you have heard of Matthew Fox? Yeah, wonderful man, wonderful theologian. I'm going to tell you something before I get to his book that he wrote, Men's Hidden Spirituality. He was a Catholic priest. He was a member of the Dominican order. He was silenced by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who later became Pope. But Matthew Fox was silenced for 1 year, which is a punishment the Catholic Church metes out, because he was deemed to be a feminist theologian. And also, from reading Matthew Fox's writings, for among other things, embracing Native American spirituality concepts. So he left the Catholic Church. He now is a member of the Episcopal Church. And one final thing about his background, this was another reason he was kind of shoved out of the Catholic Church. He refused to preach original sin. He wanted to preach original joy. If you get a chance to, and he has a website, matthewfox.org. Wonderful thinker. Any of his books, he's I don't know if he's Episcopalian, but you read his works, he draws from all spiritual faiths, traditions. Beautiful soul. This is his book, The Hidden Spirituality of Men, 10 Metaphors to Awaken the Sacred Masculine. He doesn't really, I don't even know if he uses the term sacred masculine. And he doesn't really use the term toxic masculinity, but he talks about men burying our spirituality. And I'm just going to read some of the list that opens his book about, he asks, why have men hidden their spiritual lives? And here's just some of the reasons he lists. Western culture is still a dualistic patriarchy that values thinking over feeling, material wealth over spiritual, scientific fact over intuitive knowledge, men over women, and heterosexuals over homosexuals. Men are rarely rewarded and often mocked for openly expressing their deepest feelings of joy, sensitivity, and pain. More reasons. Our anthropocentric culture puts more value on human life, needs, and rules than in connecting humbly to the vast cosmos. He's got many, many more, but one of his final reasons why men are hiding our spirituality is because of what he calls an original sin ideology that makes men doubt their beauty and right to be here, and teachings about God as a punitive father. This creates a toxic, punitive role model. So highly recommend this book. Highly recommend this book. Let's see. Do we want to get, what did I do there? There we go. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to this guy. But that last precept in Matthew Fox's list, where he talks about original sin ideology, that kind of leads us into the spiritual realm. And I don't want to be perceived as bashing the monotheistic religions. I know a number of progressive Christians, and I guess the proper phrase is Reformed Jews. There is such a thing as, and I don't know any personally, of progressive Islam, progressive Muslims who are talking about gender equality and all these kinds of things. So is the sacred masculine, is it even being practiced or integrated into anybody's spirituality? I'm going to read some of the feedback I got on Facebook and the internet. And I mostly agree with some of what I'm about to read, but not all up and down. But anyway, the Google AI overview, again, AI, and this was not to glean, knowledge, but I wanted to see, if you put this in, this is what AI is broadcasting to anybody that looks it up. So there's, oh, wow, AI is, there's a lot of discussion out there. But anyway, the AI overview, if you enter in sacred masculine, quote, refers to a positive, balanced, and healthy expression of masculine energy, often seen as a force for good, characterized by strength, courage, honor, and wisdom, while also acknowledging and honoring the divine feminine. It's not about dominance or control, but rather about inner strength, integrity, and the ability to protect and nurture both within oneself and in the world. Now, the woman who says that men are fabulous, this is her definition of sacred masculinity. It's the place in man, or a place in our masculinity, that marries wisdom with action. Because the male energy is action, it is movement, it is reaching out. Wisdom is a feminine energy, and that's where I disagree. Wisdom is a feminine, and so all of us guys here, we're left outside of that formulation. Bless her heart. But so she says wisdom is a feminine energy, the Sophia, and it comes from introspection, from quietly looking within. The sacred masculine arrives when these two dynamics, action and wisdom, come together. It's really that simple. My friend Laura Monaco Sellers, she responded, and she leads shamanic retreats, and I respect her dearly. And I really resonate with what she said in response to my Facebook query. The clearest way I can explain sacred masculine is to contemplate the difference and distance between asserted power and aligned power. Asserted power would be expressions of ego, identity, attack, objectification, and separation. It is being controlled by the mind. Whereas aligned power is expressed as sovereignty, which is self-rule, self-control, personal responsibility, sacred unity, and protection. It is using a balance of mind and heart, wisdom with compassion. And she points out that a lot of thinkers and writers on this point, including Matthew Fox, don't be too literal with this masculine feminine dynamic. And Laura pointed out it's truly not gender specific. And Matthew Fox in his book warns us to not be too literal with matters of the spirit. And I wrote about this in my Crow book, just as an offside. When we talk about matters of spirit, language fails us. It's just like trying to describe being in love. It's like trying to describe, in my career as a journalist, I wrote many music reviews. And as well, they don't know who said it, but somebody said, writing about music is like dancing about architecture, meaning you're gonna fail. So matters of the spirit, whether I'm speaking here or anybody, we do our best, and most of the time we have to give metaphors, but we can't really pin these down. I got a response from pagan elder Oberon Zell, who founded the Church of All Worlds back in the 60s, and we're Facebook friends. So I was very frankly honored that he responded. This is him talking. My thoughts: masculine and feminine only makes sense as the complementary reflection of each other. It's a yin-yang thing, cosmic dualities. For me as a man, it's about recognizing the balance in all things, the force versus the flow, expansion and contraction, systole and diastole, the pumping of the heart, passive and active, light and dark, matter and spirit, inward and outward, and God and goddess. None of these can exist without the other. And finally, where we're going to get to this image, so I put in sacred, again in AI, I put in the prompt, sacred masculine and Jesus. And that's what it came up with. And I got a response on Facebook from a person I don't know, and he said, I'm pagan, I'm not Christian, but actually I think the perfect example of sacred masculinity would be the figure of Jesus as they've created him. He is kind and compassionate and non-judgmental and strong and fearless, and he has all the qualities of sacred masculinity as far as the concept goes. I thought, wow. And I've always thought this is a tangent, but I'm pagan. My spiritual path is pagan. I've talked about that before. We see divinity in nature. We believe that there's a divine masculine essence as well as a divine feminine. There's much more, but that's the basics. But I love that you see that bumper sticker, WWJD. What would Jesus do? I think that question is a good one to ask of ourselves, whether you're a Christian or not, or anyone. If we know something about the nature of Christ. Growing up, my family was not Christian, but somehow in our house we had a PTL, Praise the Lord Club. Who was that? Who ran that? And was it Baker? It may have been Jim Baker or, what was the other guy? Pat Rock, yeah. Anyway, somehow that ended up in our household, and it's a red letter edition, so it has everything that Jesus said in red letters. And I think it was Thomas Jefferson who went through the Bible and, excluded some stuff and get it to its essence.
Jefferson Bible.
Yeah, just that's how it's known. So all that is to say, when we ask what would Jesus do, we have to know something about his true nature. Well, okay, again, as an experiment, so back to the question, is the sacred masculine even alive or being embraced or practiced in today's world? Now, in my pagan spiritual path, I know a large number, well, practically all of my pagan friends who follow and dedicate and have a serious practice connected to one or more goddesses, and sometimes gods from different mythologies and spiritual paths, modern or ancient. So what I did here was I entered all of the names of these goddesses that I have friends who are personally dedicated to these goddesses in a very serious, but in a joyous way. So I entered Gaia, which is the ancient Greek earth goddess, and I consider Gaia my goddess. Bridget, the ancient Irish, Hecate, the ancient Greek goddess, the Morgan, who is a battle goddess in Irish traditions, Sophia, and I don't know a lot about Sophia, Isis, Persephone, Lilith, Oshun, and Umoja of the Yoruba people, which is my late wife Cheryl is descended from the Yoruba people, Aphrodite, and even Kali, K-A-L-I, the fierce Hindu god. So I entered all those names to see what AI would come up with. And what does that look like? It looks like 18-year-olds, males' fantasy of hot goddesses. I mean, even there are no elders in that. And I just thought, wow, so that's what AI threw up. You enter in all those, I didn't put any other prompts. And that's what we get, hot babes that would go up on a, not to knock 18 or 20-year-old male, libidos, but wow. And then I turned around and did the same with gods. Cernunnos is the ancient antlered earth god of the ancient Celts, is my spiritual god. So I entered Cernunnos, Odin, the Norse god, Dionysus, Pan, Osiris, Pern, the hunter from the British traditions, Ra, the Egyptian sun god, and Shiva. And this is what AI came up with. Oh, it blacked out. Uh-oh. I mean, look at the aggression and animalistic. So I just entered the names. I didn't I was like, what is AI going to come up with? And if you enter it a second or third time, it'll keep throwing the image generator that I had. It'll keep throwing up different images. But this was the first. We see a lot of angry animals. The simple image is Cernunnos vaguely. But anyway, so again, to reiterate, in my pagan practice, I know a number of people, male, female, non-binary, who have serious devotions to goddesses. Not very many have serious devotions to the gods. I feel that I do, because and I know a number of my pagan friends have a connection to Cernunnos. And in fact, I contributed an essay to a Cernunnos devotional that's available online. I'm going to make a detour. This is from the TV series Vikings, which I watched it because I just wanted, some adventure. But this TV show drew a lot from history because it would mention characters, and I thought, oh no, look that up. And it would have characters, ancient Norse kings and their exploits in raiding on the British Isles, back in the 900 AD and all that. So a lot of history, but this is their depiction of Odin. And so that's just a visual. And Odin has two ravens who go around the world and spy on humankind, and they report back to Odin. Anyway, there is an ancient Norse text called the Havamal, Havamal. These days, it's considered a single poem, but it's actually a collection of a number of Old Norse poems from 900 to 1000 AD. And you can find translations online. I have it in a book form with other ancient Norse writings. And the poem is traditionally attributed to Odin. It's his voice. And most of it is wisdom, life wisdom teachings that you would see just about any New Age guru or life coach, that kind of, and I don't mean that disparagingly, but that's the nature of a lot of very short verses of how one should live a worthy life. But you knew there was a but coming, an asterisk, right? I'm going to quote the 84th verse of the Havamal. And this was a translation by a university professor named Jackson Crawford. And ancient Norse theology and history is his thing. He's very well respected. This is the 84th verse of the Havamal. No man should trust the words of a girl, nor anything a woman says. Women's hearts are molded on a wobbly wheel. Deception lurks in their word. Damn. And I have pagan friends who follow a Norse path. There's that section of modern paganism called heathenism, or you can see it called the Norse path. And, I have this discussions with Michelle, and she's pagan too. Anyway, but, we admit that we pagans, we don't have a lock on sanctity and sacredness. I mean, we have just as much mess that we have to clean up. Anyway, so I typed in, again, on the AI image generator, divine feminine, sacred masculine. This is one of the two images that came up. To me, the figures look very Asian. Although the statues in the back, that looks like a Christian idea of an angel, and I'm not sure what the other statue. Again, this is AI, which can generate very freaky images. And this was the other image that AI conjured. Again, I typed in sacred masculine, divine feminine. And that looks like the traditional depictions of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. But in the background, we see the Buddhist statue. So I'm going to give my definition of the sacred masculine. It's not definitive, but it's one that I came up with long before I formulated this talk, and long before I read the words of Oberon Zale. I see the sacred masculine as a masculinity that honors and embraces and nurtures the feminine, both the divine feminine and the practical everyday feminine. Because like Oberon, I love the way Oberon Zale articulated it. It's sacred masculine is just half of, or maybe less than. So that's my definition. I would love to know y'all's definition afterward. If you want to talk, I would love to hear. I almost wanted to challenge each of you to come up with your own definition of the sacred masculine, and feel free to share it with me. What the hell do I know? I only know what I read in the papers. So thank you all so much.